Melissa, can you tell us something about the circumstances surrounding Agon when you learned that you were going to have a role in the ballet and what the rehearsals were like?
Well, I didn't know I was going to be in Agon. I knew Mr. Stravinsky had been commissioned to do a ballet. And I saw my name on the board and I was thrilled. Again, I didn't know what this ballet was going to be about, except that Stravinsky had been commissioned to do this piece. And I thought, well, I knew there would be a lot of excitement about it. Uh, my first rehearsal was uh, as an understudy to a first movement where I was learning Violette Verdi's part. And I loved the movement. I thought, this is great. But I had never, at this point in my life and career, had learned the ballet behind somebody else, which meant that Mr. Balanchine was really creating and choreographing for Violette rather than myself. But I enjoyed the movement so much, I didn't, I thought, it's got to be better than this, actually. And then the second, then we went through, I learned this whole ballet, and then I noticed my name was called with two gentlemen. So it sounded as though I had my own part. Right, and that made me very excited. But we didn't start with the two gentlemen. We started with just me. And then I really realized if there are two gentlemen and me, we have a pas de trois, a dance for three. And then I had this rehearsal and called alone to the rehearsal. Where we used to where we did our rehearsals was at the School of American Ballet. And there was a small studio, we called it Studio 3. And there was my name for Studio 3. I walked in, nobody was there. Usually you walk in a room and the pianist is sitting at the piano studying this new music, supposedly. But Mr. Balanchine then walked in and he said, we don't have a pianist. And I said, oh, okay, I'm all very nervous anyway. So he said, well, no, we have this music. He sat down at the piano and he said, I don't know what we're going to do. He really said all this. And he started playing music, and it sounded like nothing to me. And then he said, we have counts here. It becomes 7. He played music up to 7 counts. Then he said, we have a 5, and he played the next 5 counts, and we have another 5, and next 5 counts, and now we have a 7. And in between, we have 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I thought, gee, I'm getting a music lesson. And then he got up from the piano and started choreographing. He said, so I knew what the rhythm and what the counts were, and that's how it started. And that was so much fun because we didn't have any music. He only counted 7, showed me the steps. He did the 7 and the 5s and the 7 and that little break. And we did it again with him counting. Then he sat down at the piano and checked it out without counting, and it fit. So he was thrilled. And then we went to the next phrase. It was such an exciting rehearsal for me. Can you imagine being choreographing to Stravinsky music without a pianist, except the choreographer sitting at the piano playing for you? And we finished about half of the ballet. Half an hour passed, and in half an hour he did half of the variation. Then pianist came, knocked on the door. They made a mistake in scheduling, and then we went to another studio, and the pianist looked at it and played the rest of the music. And that wasn't as exciting because Mr. Balanchine was there in front of me. Well, it was a very exciting variation, except the most exciting part was the fact there wasn't a pianist there, and he was playing and choreographing at the same time. I love telling that story. And then we had rehearsed with the two boys, and some of the movements, especially in the finale, were rather awkward and also difficult. But we got everything smoothed out. And when we did it on stage, we had never really had enough orchestra rehearsal. And Mr. Balanchine was very nervous about this. Weren't you in this ballet?
Yeah, I was.
And don't you remember him standing in the wings?
Yeah.
I think he
Yeah.
was so nervous. And my variation, he nearly got me lost. He really got me lost because he was doing something that I wasn't, I had my own rhythm in myself. And I remember I came out perfectly. I was so pleased. And it was very difficult for all of us. Do you recall
Oh,
how
yes, absolutely.
difficult it was? And some people were counting the finale. There were the fives, and some people kept counting 5, and they went up to 10, and then they got to 50, and they were up to about 60. And it was very disturbing when somebody was saying 60, and I counted in fives. So 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 2, 4, 5. So I had a number of fives, but not 60.
Yeah.
It was really funny, but it all got together. And didn't we have pride in finishing exactly right, and the orchestra was off, and sometimes we finished together. It was really very funny that time. Yeah.
But we worked so hard on it for an intense period that we felt each other's rhythms. We could have done it without music, actually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's exactly, and of course, I think choreographically and the togetherness of the dancers gave so much energy. It was more exciting to do it without any music. As you say, you really did feel each other. Right?
The place where we would get off was the triple pas de quatre.
The triple,
when the
right,
groups passed each other.
Yes, that was.
We were all yelling or kind of whispering emphatically our counts to each other.
I remember Diane Adams saying, "Don't count loud." But that was a very exciting time, and also the opening was very exciting. And I don't think Mr. Balanchine really felt secure that it would be something, a ballet the public would like. And of course, not having enough orchestra rehearsal. I remember the opening night was such a big success. And then we did it, I think, the same week or the following week on a Saturday, and children were in the audience, and it was they were screaming. It was really overwhelming for me that an afternoon audience would enjoy this ballet because it was sophisticated, I felt. It was. And it was, I think for Mr. Balanchine, another concept of contemporary movement after Forties, to do something as a group, to express something, a statement, and using a triplets, three people for the first, 2 women and a male dancer, 2 males and a female. And then there was the pas de deux, which was the center and the crux of the whole piece, I think. It was very, in a sense, erotic in a way, very successful. And then the finale was so wonderful. It was a complete piece. And also, for me, it was another extension of himself. Being in the company for a few years and being used choreographically for a few years, I realized that this was another avenue of choreography. And it was something he was doing, maybe not experimentally, but possibly another way of choreographing. That's his excitement for him, for me, his excitement.
Well, I remember the same thing that you mentioned, that we all felt that we were in on the process of a great work, a masterpiece being created, but we did not expect the public to accept it immediately. And also the one thing that bothered me in the rehearsals was that I couldn't understand Mr. B and Stravinsky and Kopeikin, the pianist, talking, because they talked all the time in Russian. Do you remember that?
Never forgot it. And you were dancing, you wondered whether they were talking about you. They kept looking and going like that. Well, I have another story with the Stravinsky coming. We were all very nervous, and Stravinsky came to watch this piece that Mr. Balanchine had choreographed. And we were all, the first part of the show went very smoothly. That I started mine with the boys, the entrance, and then I did my solo. And there were no markings of time on the score, the piano score, because at one time I went over to see, what this music was. There were a lot of spaces, notes and spaces, and no timing. So Mr. Balanchine took it upon himself to do my variation, like a sensuous Spanish.
Right.
And he choreographed all the movements, so it was very lush feeling. Then Stravinsky came, and I did it that way, and this is when they put their heads together. and said something. What they said, Mr. Balanchine said to me, "Could you please do it a little faster?" I said, "Well, sure." I said, "Sure, I'll try it." And so he said something to Copaken, I don't know, but so they made it a little faster, and it still felt, nearly the same. It wasn't that much faster. And they did it again. And Balanchine said, can you do it faster? And I said, well, I'll try. And I got, well, I'll try. And I did it, and I did it very well. But the whole thing for me was it lost its sensuous, original feeling in the choreography. But I was able to do it, and then he said that was okay. But I lost my fun because I loved doing it that way.
But I remember that you got an ovation from the dancers the first time we saw your solo.
Yeah.
We all loved it. We'd never seen anything like it, and all the flair of it, the Spanish flair, was such a surprise.
That was the surprise, yeah. I love doing it. So that was a real gift he gave me, the fact that I enjoyed it, tempo or no tempo, and that it pleased everybody to see it.
Right. And how do you feel, Melissa, about the changes that have happened to Agon over the years? It hasn't changed as much as some ballets, but of course that is inevitable with Mr. Balanchine not being around. And perhaps you remember some comments that he made on the fact that this would happen eventually.
Yes, he did. He said, nothing will be the same. Things aren't always the same. They change. It's for him. It was as though he said he knew that this would happen, and he accepted the fact that it would happen, because I think Mr. Balanchine was very much aware that nothing stands still. If you were to replace something exactly as he had choreographed a piece, if you would replace it with another group of people at another time, they could not be the same.
Right.
First of all, people are different. In 20 years, people change their physicality. Emotionally, they change. You have more access to information in the world. And it does affect dancers, because you are what you are when you are on stage. That's what people are saying. But the changes you're speaking about that I am aware of is that sometimes I'm aware of the fact that musicality is lost. You can always reconstruct a piece of choreography and show the movements. We'll talk about vocabulary rather than movements. The vocabulary vocabulary choreographed in such a way that it has a connection and it has movement. And actually some of Mr. Balanchine's choreography, as you said, with Agon, with everybody together, it didn't need the music. It had such force itself. And when I see ballets, and I do attend mostly New York City Ballet, and see ballets that I had performed in, I don't expect to see what I feel or felt when I originally did it, but I do expect to see a musicality. There's a marriage of movement and music, and that's what I miss most. And also, and that comes also with phrasing, because you can dance on the music and it's so boring, but the phrasing of the movement and the people who are dancing it somehow, for me, are disappointing, because I feel they're just doing steps. They haven't discovered what the movements could mean for them. I think in other areas, ballets aren't passed down as honestly as they could be, because a lot of the ballets that Mr. Balanchine choreographed, especially in the beginning, they tried to notate them, and they weren't very successful. It cost money at that time. We didn't have the money. And then in some way it became photographed, and not very well. And then now, of course, they photograph a whole performance from the theater, and that's a record. But so much has been lost.
I think interpretations changing is a good thing, as you said, but I agree that the musicality is the most important thing, because that was, to Mr. Balanchine, the most important element. So it would be less important for steps to be changed than for the phrasing to be lost.
I agree with you completely. Right. You could change one movement or another, but as long as it relates to the sound and it still can be successful.
And he used to keep, I felt that we always slipped if he wasn't there grabbing us back, you know? I mean, we, all the dancers, as a sort of a generalization, that he needed to keep sharpening our wits
Exactly.
and our attention.
Well, take for instance, say a ballet like Serenade. I was there present when a person who was a ballet master put the ballet together. Everybody was absolutely perfect. Every arm was there, every face was in the right place, and every movement was right together. He came into the rehearsal, watched half of it, and he said, no, I don't train armies. This is like an army dancing. No, and then he said, what are you doing? And then he showed what he wanted. Well, for me, that was an embarrassment for the person who had set the ballet, and I had to be there. I was rehearsing this ballet at this point. I had danced it many times. So it was brought to my attention, boy, you can't dance on, as you said, the lack of phrasing on the music, okay, but you can't look like an army.
Right.
And as you said, the way he came in to not change anything, but if you were cooking a meal, I would say, like putting the salt and pepper and all the seasoning into it. So it was tasteful again. Because I used to love doing Nutcracker with him, because each year, the opening scene, he always liked to change something to make it alive. We all knew what we were doing. We came in the right time. We did reverence, whatever we were told to do. But he was there to change. Maybe we go like this. No, not now. Later, always changing something that made you more aware of what you were doing. And also, whenever someone rehearsed the ballet, he would always come in at the last moment and look. He had something to say, a little bit, and everybody was so aware. It added to your consciousness about what you were doing.
Yes, and sometimes when he came in, I remember rehearsing ballets, and we had like 15 minutes to get the new people in, and Mr. B would start changing everything and changing the timing, and the time was gone. And but the ballet looked better.
Yes,
no matter, even if people didn't know exactly what they were doing.
That's the thing, that he was like magic. He could do such wonderful things, and I think he loved the fact sometimes there was this emergency.
Yes.
Yes, something
he created
happened.
it.
Oh,
right.
yeah, right.
Should we talk a little bit about episodes?
I'd like to. Right.
And there again, I was there at the same time, and my favorite part of the ballet was the Bach Ricercata.
Yes.
Ricercata.
Yes, I could never pronounce that probably.
Yeah, right. But it was, and I followed you, reflected all your movements behind you.
Choreographically,
and it was a wonderful experience being in that part of the ballet.
Yeah. And as you said at one point, it's what the cathedral or the openness, the expanse of everybody dancing together and choreographically relating to each other. It was, for me, a wonderful experience. And as you said, for you too.
Yes.
Great. I love that ballet. When I first was caught for that ballet, I'm trying to recall the circumstances. Yes, Mr. Balanchine, we were, I think, on the West Coast in L.A., and we were watching a performance. He turned to me and said, would you like to dance more contemporary or classic? I'm going to do a ballet. What would you like? He favored me at that moment very much. So it was, for me, I was saying, gosh, what do you want me to say? And I was very honest. I said I'd like more contemporary, because for me, when he said this, he was investigating something else again, having been in Agon. And I said, and I've done so many classic ballets. You have? He said. I said, of course I have. All these tutu ballets. And so when we got back to New York and the schedule was put up, I was invited to, in the episodes, that was interesting for me, because it was at first designed to include Martha Graham and her dancers. And the music was Webern music, right? a composer who died very young and left this music, and it's recorded on 5 sides of a 78 would be. Yeah, and that is the whole all that he had ever written as a composer. And someone in Europe must have gotten all this together. And Mr. Balanchine was going to use this music. Of course, 5 sides is quite a bit of music, I would say, about 4 hours or so. And this ballet that I discovered was going to be 1 hour long, half an hour given to Miss Graham for her company, and the rest was given to us. And I realized, I watched a rehearsal of Martha Graham, and she had half an hour of an abstract story, and different than what she usually costumed her dancers, much more flowing to the body. They were quite elaborate and Elizabethan in design, and black, all black and satin and black ruffles and huge black jet stones, and they looked so elegant. And I guess she must have chosen her music as she felt she wanted to, whether she asked Mr. Balanchine or not. And so he started the ballet, his part, and he took different pieces, and it was unrelated. Whereas her half hour was a story, an abstract story. The parts that we were given were like structured pieces. 5 minutes here, symphony there, concerto there, another piece there, and then my piece at the end. So that each piece was separate. And so you had for me, they were like little jewels. You know, they were only connected by the sound or the composer himself. And each piece had a different, the symphony that was so, the first movement was so wonderful. And then the next week was so different. And then it continued that way. And when it came to my piece, as we started the rehearsal, it all flowed. We never had one time that we stopped. I think he choreographed that piece, and I think it's nearly 7 minutes, with the chorus behind, all those girls behind, and I think there were like probably 16 girls in this.
I think so. Yeah.
And it was Frank Bonzio and myself. And I don't know if you can recall the movements flowing, or was there a problem? There wasn't.
No, it's happened very easily.
Easily.
Yeah. And were we all there at the same time, or did he
No,
create on you first?
Yes.
Yeah,
And
that's what I thought.
Then he did.
Then he added
the girls behind, and it was a great. For me, it was wonderful. It was so easy. There was some, from a musical point of view, a little bit. Well, I had to be on my toes, shall we say? The rhythms, the contrasting rhythms with the sound. It suited me very nicely. In parts, it's very jazzy, but you do it classically. And the timing was exciting. And you had to be aware of where the changes of choreography were, where it happened. So that was my experience with episodes. And it was a tremendous success, both pieces. And then, unfortunately, the following season, we didn't have Martha. And I said to myself, this is not going to be a success. It's just not going to be successful, because the exciting part for me, I used to go out and watch Martha because I was at the end of the ballet. And she started the ballet. I used to watch her part. And I liked it so much. It was so in such great contrast. I didn't think it would have the same success, but it did. And I was happy for that.
And I remember in the Bach section, the movements for the girls were very grand and slow and monumental.
Yes.
And then you had all this sort of
little
contrapuntal
yes.
Steps in between it, like
Yes.
finding more music inside the music.
That was well put. Exactly. I could never bear exactly what happened.
Which made it much more intricate and extremely compelling. I think we all felt that it was a kind of religious experience, each performance.
Exactly. One of my favorites.
Yeah.
To dance. And very much successful. When we went abroad, we used to take it all the time. Went to Europe, and any place we took it, it was a success.
And then Divertimento, you've said is one of your very favorite ballets.
the greatest. No, choreographically, I think it's the greatest of Balanchine's classical ballets because the music is fantastic. And it started with, we had a Mozart festival from, and the conductor, Langsdorff,
Leinsdorf.
Leinsdorf,
Yeah.
who
Right.
was conducting the orchestra. And it was a festival outside of New
Oh,
York.
at Stratford.
And Stratford,
Yeah,
that's
right.
where it was. And this point that Mr. Balanchine did not only Divertimento, he did a pas de deux with Tanny and Monsignor and another one, a shorter one.
Wasn't there something called A Musical Joke? Is
Yes,
that what it was?
That's
Yeah.
exactly what it was. And Divertimento being the largest piece, it was about, well, Divertimento is about 30, 40 minutes,
Something like
something like that. And that was the bulk of it, the need of the festival. And when he started the choreographing for Divertimento, we had a beginning down our entrance, and I'm sure he had already worked with the corps because the opening, no, the girls come in at the minuet. The boys make the first movement, don't they?
The girls are on stage at the beginning,
Oh,
too.
at the beginning,
Yeah.
and they're doing waltz,
Right.
waltz, attitude, they're going up, and
Yeah.
then they go, yes, so he worked with the 8 girls, and 2 girls in front, like little demi-soloists, I think.
Oh, what
Like,
they hold the ballerinas.
yes,
Yeah.
and yeah, that's right. And that's how it opened. I didn't know, as a dancer, I didn't, as part of this ballet, I didn't know anything, because he had done that separately. Very separately. Then we were called, our 5 girls were called, and we had our entrance. And then the boys came, and they danced in front of us. And then he did it very chronologically, because there was a way you came to rehearsal, rehearsed, then you saw the boys, and you danced with them, you danced with the boys, and then they did their little theme, and we were doing the variations. And then everybody was called separately. And then separately, inviting them to come to a rehearsal after he did the first variation with Allegra. Then I would come to rehearsal alone, and then each person would come. And then when we would have practice of it, everybody was there. So you saw how we corrected Allegra, and everybody
yes,
watched
right.
everybody's variation. And Diana, we watched what she was doing. We knew it practically, and everybody knew everybody. And Tanny's variation, wonderful variation.
Showgirl.
Oh boy,
Yeah.
is it ever! And of course the last one, which is very brilliant. And then we were put together with the boys, and that's the way the ballet was constructed in sections. And then when the adagio came, everybody was there. When he started the adagio, he had all these girls, and you know what the adagio is like. Phrases of music with one boy and one dancer, and before they disappeared and somebody else came on, and then 2 other dancers came on, and then boy came on with a girl again.
Yeah.
It just flowed.
Yeah,
One of the
beautifully.
most beautiful adagios ever.
Melissa, there were a number of people in that cast of Divertimento who had danced Caracol, but I guess you had not.
Yes, I
Right?
did.
Oh, you had?
I did.
Oh.
Yes.
And I've always wondered how different Caracol and Divertimento are.
Well, to begin with, I think they're nearly the same, but they are different. The structure of, for instance, the solos are nearly, not quite the same, but nearly the same. And using the same kind of dancer, type of dancer for each of the variations. It was limited. We didn't have, Patty didn't do the fast variation. It was Maria. And I did the first variation. No, Patty always did the first and I always did the second variation.
Same one.
But not the same choreography,
Oh,
because I had
interesting.
learned such different choreography. The second time, completely different, whereas Patty's first variation that Allegra had done, he used some of the later, the later steps in the variation. He repeated, so he must have remembered. You must remember that Mr. Balanchine sometimes forgot his own choreography. Right.
Which
Right.
did not concern him very much.
No, he didn't. No, absolutely. And so the difference being there was in the adagio the same kind of split thing, but not as overlapping.
Oh.
I remember I had, with Nikki, I had a little bit of choreography as the dojo. And the next time I came on, I danced with Jerome Robbins, who was in that ballet, Caracol. And that's all I can recall. Andrei Glevsky danced in that ballet, so he was, and there were 3 boys, 3 men. As it became Divertimento, there were still just 3 men in Caracol. And exactly when the finale, we had our little bits to come in and do our pieces. The structure was nearly the same, but the choreography was quite different. It was more expansive, where one of the boys came in with the 2 tall girls. And that same thing in Caracol, except the steps were not the same. No. I think he loved the music so. And of course, when you dress the body differently, Caracol looked like we were like little horses,
right, with
the plumes and little puffs on our sleeves, and it looked quite peasanty and very white and white on white, different textures. And then you get in Divertimento, I always thought we were buttercups. It was so glowing with yellow and the light blues and the tones. It seemed to me like a spring day, you know, when the sun came out. And I never had that feeling with Caracol. It was so different. I think the dress made the difference. And possibly the choreography made the difference.
Something that you said really intrigued me because it explains a lot to me. There was a communal feeling about Divertimento.
Oh, yeah.
You know how when I was in the Corps de Ballet, I watched everything and also knew the variations, so that when I was given the solo part to do, and it was your part, that I really knew the steps already. But I wonder if you remember that you used to help me with it.
Well, if you said I did, I must
You
have.
don't remember, but it was such a strong memory for me because we were on stage between matinee and evening, which happened often that we were there working in the dark theater. And you took that variation apart for me. And I knew all the steps, but you said that it was completely flat, that I was doing them all the same. So you showed me the dynamics in the variation, which I never would have understood otherwise.
And people
so
teaching
it's a very
it
precious memory for
Thank
me.
you, thank you. And I know you love Divertimento.
Oh, yes.
And when you do it for your company, you give them the cadence of the movement and all the interpretation, timing, and everything.
I try to.
Oh, I know you do.
And then there was something else you said that's very interesting, an experience that's probably been similar. We understand the ballets in many ways from dancing them, but in a different way when we're staging them. Can you want to explain that?
Well, the thing is, which I was awed, whenever I was awed by Mr. Balanchine's choreography only after I started teaching people what the choreography was. And I realized what a genius he was. And then I learned from the way, what I saw and what I had experienced. I can only say that only somebody like a god, in a sense, someone so great, could ever discover how to do something like this. When you talk about someone in this century as being a great artist, great choreographer, a great person, I mean, somebody that God touched. God touched Mr. Balanchine, I believe
no question.
that. You know, he did, because there is no way he could, there was no way that anybody could do what he did in such a beautiful way and with such a variety of ways. And for him to be able to say, oh, him to himself, this is important. This is meaningful to me. And I realized certain ballets he did and others that this means something to me. As an example, when he did Liebeslieder, the man fell in love. He fell in love with the music. He fell in love with every dancer he chose to be in it. 4 women and 4 men. I don't think he fell in love with the men. But
I don't think so. but very much with the women.
Very much. And now, you know, his generosity, it was amazing. And you felt like you wanted to do more. And some of this passion really overwhelmed me. I mean, he was so generous. And nobody creates a person like that but God. You know, and one time I asked him, you know, choreography can be taught, can't it? He said, oh, yes. books are written. You go from one place to another. You go around in a circle. You go front and back. He said, that's not choreography. To be a choreographer, you have to breathe it. You have to sleep with it. You have to eat it. Mm-hmm. You have to be in your mind, in your dreams, constant. And just everything you look at is choreography. That makes a choreographer. That gave me, not poor Mr. Balanchine, but isn't that wonderful to live in this world of his making of steps and movements and how people could, move and how he could make it happen. And he, I think, knew his power as to how to make people do something the right way. The right way being the way he wanted something to look. Also the right way for that dancer to absorb and be able to do it.
There are moments in each ballet that I know are very special to him, and usually it's a musical timing. Mm-hmm. And that I feel that presenting those really clearly are serving him, mm-hmm. but also giving a gift to the dancer.
Yes, and
it's a perfect. Wonderful feeling to be able to give that gift.
Yes, and you have it.
Oh,
you do.
Well, look at you.
No, because you've done so many of his ballets so beautifully, and such beautiful dancers. But you, through whatever your appreciation of Balanchine, has done that, and you have served him, because your dancers make his ballets live.
Well, the wonderful thing about these 2 days is rediscovering the inspiration that you gave me.
Perfect.
Have given me all my life.
Thank you.
And it is a great thing to experience it again.
Thank you so much. And I'm so happy I'm here again with you.